I just want maybe for anybody that doesn't know your story, maybe just to give us the brief introduction of what you're doing and how you got into it.
Yeah, you want to give the intro? Okay, so about a year and a half ago, Alyssa and I, we had been living in Texas our whole life, and we were sitting there and just talking things about our future. What do we want to do? And we essentially came to the conclusion that we couldn't put up with another multiple 100-degree summer in Texas because it's just miserable. And we were talking about our future and what we wanted to do, and we realized we were engaged at this time. We realized there was 5 different places across the country where we think we may want to possibly live. It was Portland, Oregon, Southern California, beautiful weather. You know, you're there.
It's rough. It's a rough life out here in San Diego.
Yeah, Nashville, North Carolina, and Boulder.
Boulder.
Yeah, and so we're like, these 5 places, maybe after we get married, our wedding's this May, we'll go, get an Airbnb or something in these different places and try them out for short stints of time. And Alyssa was like doing our route because she's the planner. And she looked at this and she goes, Heath, like thinking back to this bucket list that we made a couple years ago where we said we wanted to go visit all 50 states, we're going to have to zigzag across the country. We can easily go hit all 50 states if we're going to do this. And I was like, that sounds awesome. Like, let's do it. And so we started scheming, and we realized it was going to take us 7 months. And we both had day jobs, and we're like, we're going to have to quit those. We're going to have to tell our parents that we're quitting our jobs like right before our wedding. It's going to be terrible. But ultimately, we realized that it was going to take us 7 months, and that if we were going to be traveling for that long after getting married, that we would want to have some kind of mission to keep us going whenever, like we're in places like the Dakotas or Kansas where there's nothing happening and it's raining, or, we get struck by lightning, which actually happened. And in our RV, we'll talk about that later. But like, we needed some kind of central mission to keep us going. Thought about like serving at nonprofits or connecting with like people that we look up to while on the road. And we're like, oh, those are cool. And then one day after lunch with a mentor, he's like, you're young, you're entrepreneurial, still trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. You have all these questions that you're trying to answer. Why don't you go and work a different job in every state? It was just something he threw out there as an example. And I said, I really like that. I think I'm going to go do it.
Yeah. That's so cool. So, I mean, I love how you start with a big idea, but it's smaller than the current version, and it just keeps expanding. It keeps growing. And then you guys tie the mission part into it. And then it grows even further than that, right? Because then it becomes, and this is probably, where Alyssa steps in too, because then it becomes now, well, let's film a documentary about this whole thing.
Yeah. You can talk about that.
So whenever Heath said he wanted to work a job in every single state that we visited, I immediately said no, because that's a terrible idea, because who wants to work on their honeymoon?
Sure, that's a valid response, I think, for sure.
But he actually found us a sponsor company, Snag a Job, so that they find hourly jobs for people online, their job board, and so they were going to help us find the jobs, and they were going to pay us to be on the road. So then I was like, okay, this is a great idea. I'll hop on board now. And they said they would send us the film equipment if we would make it into a documentary.
Wow.
And so they sent us the camera, which I kind of like halfway learned on YouTube and just through trial and error. And we just went out and filmed. So we have like 2 terabytes worth of footage from all across the country.
Wow.
Another side item is that another thing on my bucket list was in college, my roommate had filmed a documentary, and I went to the premiere, and his documentary was about the restoration from a big natural disaster here in the Austin area where it was the worst natural disaster fire-wise to ever happen, and it burnt down over 1,600 homes. And he filmed the process of like a year after the fire, and it premiered in Austin. He raised funds for the relief victims. And one of the ladies who had watched his film and her home had burnt down came up to him after the movie and said, James, like, this touched me, and she was crying and just how much this meant to her. And I, even though I had no background in film, I had this thing go off inside of me that saw the power of film to be able to affect people's lives. And so on that bucket list of the 50 states was also filming a documentary, even though we had no experience. So whenever they said, we'll help you guys, you send you a bunch of equipment and turn this into a documentary, Alyssa was like, you can't say no to this.
Yeah. Well, I was telling you guys before we jumped on the interview, and some of the people that all grown up know that I tried to film a documentary living in a retirement home. But the same exact thing. I had no idea. Never thought once that I would do that. But it just, when you get that idea and you tie it into a need, right? And then it just keeps growing and expanding, and then you leverage things that come out of nowhere from that forward movement. You guys are moving forward with an idea, and then it's like doors find their way to open at strategic points, right? And it seems like that's your guys' story, where it's just like one thing after another became, this becomes more of a reality than it did when it was first started.
Yeah.